There is something almost terrifying about realizing how much of your life you've lived on autopilot, drifting between distractions pulled by habits that don't serve you, surrounded by noise that shapes you more than your intentions do in one day. You wake up and feel the quiet ache of wasted potential, not as guilt, but as clarity. The kind that hurts because it's true. And the Stoics warned us of this, that the greatest loss is the life we delay, the time we trade for nothing, the years that dissolve, just because we weren't paying attention. And maybe that's why the idea of 6 months of focus feels impossible. Because you've spent years living in fragments, scattering your energy across things you barely care about, people who barely see you, routines that barely hold you. And you tell yourself you're tired, unmotivated, overwhelmed. But beneath all that noise is a simpler truth. You've never given yourself a real chance. Not a concentrated one, not a season without sabotage, not a window of time where your effort matches your desire and the gap between who you are and who you want to be is not as big as it feels. It's just filled with distractions. And distractions come in many forms. Some loud, some subtle, some disguised as comfort, some disguised as connection, some disguised as rest. And the hardest part is admitting that most of what keeps you stuck. ISNT dramaticate. S, small, repeated, familiar. And you cling to it because familiarity feels safe, even when it's draining you. But the moment you decide to focus, truly focus, life begins to reorganize itself around that decision. And what once felt impossible suddenly feels inevitable. 6 months of focus doesn't mean 6 months of perfection. It means 6 months of honesty. 6 months of choosing the long-term over the momentary. 6 months of replacing chaos with clarity. 6 months of building instead of wishing. 6 months of becoming instead of performing. In these choices, though small, create a kind of momentum that changes you at a cellular level. Because consistency, even quiet, consistency the way you see yourself. And what makes this powerful is not the timeline, but the transformation, the raising of your standards. The realization that discipline isn't restriction, it's protection. Protection from old versions of you that would rather stay comfortable than grow. Protection from people who benefit from your stagnation. Protection from habits that numb you while convincing you they're harmless. And when you commit to focus, you begin to understand that discipline is not about control, it's about freedom. The freedom to choose your life instead of reacting to it. It will hurt at first, not because the work is too heavy, but because you finally stop running from yourself, and solitude will feel sharp, and silence will feel loud, and your old coping mechanisms will scream for your attention. But this discomfort is not a sign of failure, it is the friction of transformation, the shedding of an identity built on avoidance, the unlearning of years spent escaping your own potential. And the Stoics taught that discomfort is a teacher, not a punishment. And if you sit with it long enough, it reveals the person you're meant to become. 6 months of focus narrows your world in a way that feels lonely. But the loneliness is purifying, stripping away everything that never truly belonged to you. And you start to see who adds to your life and who takes from it. Who supports your becoming, and who relies on your stagnation. And without anger, without drama, without confrontation, you begin to drift away from anything that isn't aligned. And this quiet separation is the beginning of strength. And then something shifts slowly, subtly. Steadily you start waking up with purpose instead of panic. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become calmer. Your decisions become cleaner. And the work you once avoided becomes the work you're grateful for. Because you can finally feel yourself moving. Not in leaps, but in inches. And those inches accumulate into a momentum that no longer feels fragile. You realize that most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack focus, not because they aren't capable, but because they stop. Too often restart, too often break. Their promises to themselves too often, and consistency becomes rare. So rare that when you begin practicing it even quietly, the world starts to shift around you. And 6 months later, you look back, not with pride, but with relief and see the distance you've traveled internally, the habits you've broken, the beliefs you've rebuilt, the self-respect you've recovered, and it hits you that this version of you was always possible. You just never gave yourself enough uninterrupted time to become them, and the respect you feel toward yourself becomes deeper than any praise others could offer. The Stoics believed that the greatest power is the ability to direct your own mind, And focus, true sustained focus, is the modern expression of that ancient wisdom, because when you focus, you take ownership of your life, and ownership creates identity, and identity creates destiny, and suddenly you're not chasing your future. You're building it quietly, steadily, deliberately. And that's why 6 months of focus can put you 5 years ahead, not because time bends, but because you stop wasting it. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become aligned. Not because the world changes, but because you do deeply, inwardly, irreversibly. And in a world addicted to distraction, that kind of focus is a revolution, and you are capable of it the moment you decide that your future is worth more than your comfort.